The party was already in full swing by the time we arrived. The air hummed with energy, laughter, clinking glasses, conversations weaving together in a chaotic harmony. Music thumped from the speakers, setting a steady rhythm that seemed to fuel the crowd. This was Sebastian's world, a sea of familiar faces, lively chatter, and effortless mingling. I, on the other hand, felt out of place, like a visitor in a space that wasn't quite mine. It wasn't that I was shy. I could hold my own in any crowd. But gatherings like this always felt like noise to me, a blur of people talking over each other without ever really saying much. My energy came from quieter moments, from deep conversations, or, better yet, losing myself in a new adventure. But tonight, I was here because Sebastian wanted me to be, and I understood that this world was important to him. As we navigated through the throng of people, Sebastian thrived, introducing me to his friends, laughing, his hand gently guiding me with a light touch on my back. He was in his element, gliding from one conversation to the next, completely at ease. I smiled and nodded, exchanged pleasantries, but my mind wandered. I couldn't help but notice how different we were. Sebastian, with his social ease and comfort in these crowded spaces, and me, always longing for the next horizon, the next adventure that didn't involve so many people. By the time I found myself standing alone by the drink table, swirling a glass of lemonade in my hand, that familiar restlessness had already crept in. It wasn't that I didn't enjoy the night or the people. Everyone was perfectly nice. But it felt hollow, like I was playing a role that didn't quite fit. Sebastian's world of parties and late-night socializing was so different from mine. His comfort in crowds clashed with my need for space and solitude. He was the center of attention, and I was always looking for an escape into something quieter, more meaningful. I looked around at the sea of people, all so at ease, while I stood on the edge, feeling like an outsider. And it hit me, how different our orbits were, how we moved through life in such separate rhythms. It wasn't about not caring for him. I did. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were heading in different directions. I loved Sebastian's charm and easygoing nature, but I couldn't ignore the nagging sense that I was always looking for something more, something that didn't fit into this crowded, noisy world. As the night wore on, Sebastian eventually made his way back to me, grinning as he draped his arm over my shoulder. His presence was warm, familiar, but my thoughts were distant. We slipped out of the apartment together, the cool night air, a welcome relief from the heat of the crowded room. The drive back was quiet, the city lights flashing by in a blur, while Sebastian hummed softly along to the radio. I stared out the window, my mind swirling with thoughts I couldn't quite articulate. By the time we neared my apartment, I knew I had to say something. The silence between us felt heavy with everything I hadn't said. Sebastian was content, humming along, but I wasn't. My thoughts were too loud, too insistent to ignore anymore. I'd been thinking about us for a while now, about where we were headed, or if we were even heading in the same direction at all. I liked him, maybe even more than I wanted to admit, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were trying to blend two lives that didn't quite fit together. He thrived in these social spaces, while I craved freedom. Freedom to explore, to move, to chase the unknown. I wondered if he understood that. If he knew that, for me, love wasn't about settling into one place or blending our lives into one predictable path. It was about having the freedom to grow, to change, to follow my own course, even if it led us down different roads. As we pulled up to my apartment, Sebastian glanced at me, sensing my distance. His question hung in the air, asking if everything was all right. I hesitated, trying to find the words, but I knew I couldn't hold back any longer. I had to be honest, even if it meant disrupting the easy flow we had. I explained my thoughts, my need for independence, for space to grow. Sebastian listened, his brow furrowed, but there was understanding in his eyes. He knew me well enough to see this coming, I think. He had always known I wasn't the type to settle down easily. He didn't interrupt, letting me spill out my thoughts about how different we were, about how I didn't want to feel pulled in a direction that didn't fit who I was. It was a hard conversation, but one that had to happen. I didn't want to lose him, but I also didn't want to lose myself in a relationship that demanded more than I could give. I needed my freedom, my space to roam, and I needed him to understand that. To his credit, Sebastian took it well. He didn't argue, didn't push back. He understood, or at least he was trying to. As we sat in the quiet of his car, parked outside my building, we both knew that the future was uncertain. There was something good between us, but it wasn't enough to ignore the differences that could one day pull us apart. I needed a partner who could walk beside me, but also let me roam free. Sebastian wanted to be that person, but we both knew it wasn't going to be easy. When I finally got out of the car and walked up to my apartment, I felt lighter, even though there was still so much left unsaid. I had been honest, and that was all I could do. As I collapsed onto my couch, staring up at the ceiling, I wondered what the future held for us. Sebastian was great, but was he the person I could truly build something lasting with? Or was he just a chapter in my journey? Someone who brought joy but wasn't meant to stay? Only time would tell. For now, all I could do was take things one day at a time, letting the relationship unfold naturally, without forcing it into something it wasn't. That was the only way I knew how to love. Open, honest, and always with an eye on the horizon.